Right, we're back. Lecture 9. Lecture 8 was a nightmare. It was a bit like doing brain surgery with a blindfold. It was difficult even trying to write the stuff to try and interpret what he meant for me. So God knows what it was like for you, because just speaking it was terrible. And there was a lot of Hegel in there. So today it's a bit better. There's a big long Hegel quote. So there's a bit less Hegel, a bit more me. I'm a simple guy, so hopefully it won't be as difficult, this one. It'll be a bit more straightforward, but we'll see. It's Force and Understanding. We're still on that. Hegel on the beach, number 9, different location. And there's the beach over there. So we'll get cracking with Force and Understanding part 2. So paragraph 143. This genuine essence of things now has been determined as not existing immediately for consciousness, rather consciousness has a mediated relation to the inner, and as the understanding, it looks to the true background of things by means of this mediating middle of the play of forces. The mediating middle, which merges together the two extremes, the understanding and the inner, is the developed being of force, which for the understanding is henceforth a vanishing. For that reason it is called appearance, for being that is immediately in its own self a non-being is what is called semblance. However, it's not only a semblance but rather an appearance, a whole of semblances. Okay, so what Harris says is, the understanding knows that only the thinking mind can comprehend appearance as a totality, which was, we were saying that the thinking mind, as though there's a mind that's not necessarily thinking. I think it's sort of, it's the way, when I say scientists think, I think that's what I'm heading towards. But if the concept in which appearance is totally comprehended is true, then that means that the concept corresponds to the supersensible reality of what appears. The scientist sets up the ideal of simply observing reality as it objectively is. She knows that it's being truly observed when everything fits together in a logically coherent whole. That is reason's certainty of itself. So reason's certainty of itself is a scientist looking at the whole and saying that it's in a logical order. The scientific observer is conscious that the flux of appearance vanishes into an intelligible reality, the order of nature, which she supposes to be simply there, but this order is a concept, not a thing. It is an objective concept, and the objectivity of the concept is different from that of things. The objectivity with which we are concerned is that of a reason for a rationalist. So, the objectivity is not out there, the objectivity is in here, it's in our understanding. So, again, this Kantian policy involves a misunderstanding of the logical function of knowledge as a standard. Our system of laws is a still picture of the resting equilibrium of being in this Pythagorean supersensible world. So the Pythagorean supersensible world, Pythagoras was the man who drew, hypotenuse and whatever. And that supersensible world was the world of geometry and stuff like that. The world of absolute certainty and the world of laws and order and, so many degrees in a triangle. And so it's up there. It's like a Plato thing, isn't it? It's what we consider to be up. The ideas are up there, aren't they? And the real world is down here. So this is now Hegel. So this is a long quote from Hegel, but I think it's some of it makes sense. Not all of it makes sense, but a lot of this made sense. So let's go going. 150. This realm of laws is, to be sure, the truth of the understanding. Right, the last one was, let's have a look, it was 140, so we'll skip forward to 150. This realm of laws is, to be sure, the truth of the understanding. The realm of laws is the truth of understanding, of scientific understanding, which has to be content to the difference that lies within the law. However, it is at the same time only the understanding's first truth, and does not completely bring appearance to its fulfillment. So it's an incomplete, I think it's incomplete, that's what we're getting at. The law is now current in appearance, but it is not the entire presence of appearance. Under ever different circumstances, the law has an ever different actuality. The law according to which a stone falls and the law according to which the heavenly spheres move have been conceptually grasped as one law. However, in this collapse into each other, the laws lose their determinateness. The law becomes ever more superficial, and as a result, what is found is not really the unity of these determinate laws, but rather one law which omits their determinateness in the way that the one law which unifies within itself the Lord of bodies falling to the earth and the Lord of heavenly movement does not in fact express either of them. The unification of all laws into universal attraction expresses no further content than that of the mere concept of law itself, which is posited as existing therein. Universal attraction only says this: everything has a constant difference with regard to everything else. So it's a banality. That's my little bit. The law is a banality. It doesn't really tell us anything. In saying that, the understanding supposes that it has found a universal law which expresses universal actuality as such, but has in fact only found the concept of law itself. Nonetheless, it has done so in such a way that it says, beg your pardon, at the same time that all actuality is in its own self lawful. For that reason, the expression of universal attraction has to that extent great importance as it's got great importance, but as it is directed against the unthinking representation for which everything presents itself in the shape of contingency, and for which so everything is contingent in the meantime. You know, apples are falling off trees, and you know, people are talking to cameras, and stuff's happening in the world. So how is that related to law? How is this related to this world governed by a universal law? Okay. So this everything presents itself in the shape of contingency, and for which determinateness has the form of sensuous self-sufficiency. So Harris's take on this, and then we'll ease up a little bit. I think we won't be so dense and difficult and foggy. Okay, so Newton restored the unity of that understanding of that. Newton restored that the unity that the understanding had lost. Right, start again. Newton restored the unity that the understanding had lost. Okay, so it's a good thing. It's a good thing it's come along by replacing the old physical dichotomy between the immutable and the temporal, the heavens and the earth, with a conceptual abstraction. So Newton has come in with his geometrical equations. He distinguished what is understandable from what is not by establishing a properly universal concept of motion. Newton is deservedly one of the greatest names in the history of science, because in his universal theory of motion, the understanding arrived at its objective concept, the unconditioned universal as observable. Remember, we talked about, if you managed to get that far in the video, what the unconditioned universal was. And it's observable. At every stage, each form of consciousness poses its own understanding of truth. Hegel is recapitulating Kant's Copernican turn, which I'm going to come to in a second. But he's also trying to remove, because this is what it's all about really. It's not just about laws, it's about laws and the mind, how the two of them match up. So I'll come to that shortly. So he's capitulating Kant's Copernican turn, but he's also trying to remove the barrier between appearance and the knowable thing in itself. Okay, so what we see and what it really is. So to recapitulate Kant, so just as Copernicus turned, this is what Kant's view was. So Copernicus turned traditional science on its head by explaining, in the same way the heavens were discovered not to revolve around us, Kant's metaphysics, and by metaphysics I mean his first principles, like the Copernican revolution, states that instead of assuming that knowledge must conform to objects, that now objects must conform to our a priori knowledge. So knowledge doesn't conform to objects, objects conform to our knowledge. So Kant suggested that we project our understanding or our concepts onto the world. Hegel is saying that we do this for every form of consciousness. Although, I might have to rewrite that, I think. But anyway, so we're projecting on. So when we look at something, we've got a whole set of concepts and we're projecting it onto the thing. Sense, certainty, perception, and the understanding presupposes that objects, the properties of objects, and the forces of the universe, like electricity, gravity, constitute the truth. Yeah. And that's the ultimate irreducible fact that makes knowledge true. What is out there constitutes the truth. The world inflicts its reality upon us. There's nothing we can do about it. When gravity makes a tree fall on our head, that's the ultimate reality. If this stand blows over because it's windy, then that's I can hold it up, but it'll keep on blowing over. And there's nothing, it's imposing itself on me. It's doing stuff to me. If that's the ultimate reality, then my mind and what I take to be true must be a reflection of what's going on in the outside world. As the world changes, so does my consciousness. I mean, that's the sort of in a sense, that is kind of the common sense view, isn't it? That people think, well, stuff changes and my mind changes according to that. And according to this approach, I'm passive. The world is decisive. In a sense, the world's the actor. On the other hand, look at Robert Oppenheimer. He's the scientist who led the Manhattan Project. That's the project that created the atomic bomb. 2 of these bombs would be used to obliterate the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki during the Second World War. Oppenheimer was a scientist, and according to sense, certainty, perception, and the understanding, then science is about understanding the world. The world's the ultimate reality, and I just reflect what's going on. The world's the decisive actor. But Oppenheimer did the opposite, and the Manhattan Project was about the opposite thing. He blew up the world, or at least he blew up part of it, significant part of it. He blew it to atoms, didn't he? So the equations that he had in his head, and that took loads of mathematical geniuses and physicists to the team to work out how we're going to blow this stuff up. So they used these equations to completely alter what we know as reality. So it wasn't that reality is imposing itself on us, it was the other way around. So there are 2 contradictory things that are going on. On the one hand, we're trying to understand the world by getting our thoughts to try to match the world. So we observe thunderstorms and we try to make our thoughts match this worldly phenomenon. I don't shout at the storm. I'm not like Robert Oppenheimer in miniature, shouting, "Stop, rain, stop now," as though this would actually have any effect. The way many pre-modern people do, try to invoke a rain god or something to pray for rain or so on. But we're looking at the world as moderns. So on the one hand, we moderns, we're trying to change the world to make the world conform to our wishes and our conceptions, like the ancients. Only we've got more success doing this because we've got knowledge and science behind us and it holds history. And maybe we're not trying to change the world on the scale. Well, no one's trying to change the world. Very few people want to change the world, I should say, on the scale that Robert Oppenheimer was. But there's another way of being in the world that we call action. Okay, so we try to make the world conform to our desires. The world determines what I am, or do I determine what the world is? So again, this is the bit I think that this section's about. Now, I said I was going to come back to Kant. So Kant's third antinomy, which we all know. You've probably got it on a wall on the wall, haven't you, at home? Like Kant's third antinomy, a little like what's it called? A little book of knowledge or something. You'd have a quote a day. But Kant's third antinomy, right, is this. He puts the problem like this about us and the world and the relationship. He said there's a world of freedom and a world of laws. Thesis: causality, in accordance with the laws of nature, is not the only causality from which the appearances of the world can one and all be derived. To explain these appearances, it's necessary to assume that there's also another causality, that of spontaneity, which means us doing stuff, asking for a cup of tea or going for a walk. And this is its antithesis. There is no spontaneity and everything is the world. This is what the antinomy is. There's no spontaneity, everything in the world takes place solely in accordance with the laws of nature. Okay, so this is this conflict that we've got. Hegel's saying that there must be a non-sensible thing in itself that binds the many together, and we describe this non-sensible thing as force. Law is the unity, the unchanging, the underlying something that doesn't change. It's the underlying something of something that does change. So that's the underlying, the law is the underlying inertness, and the something is the thing that changes. So that's Hegel. So cause and effect are not structures of the universe. This is a more controversial point and something that we should be thinking about. So cause and effect aren't structures of the universe. Cause and effect are things that we need to explain, that explains the universe. So cause and effect is something that we do. Cause and effect isn't something out there, it's something in here. And actually, the American poet Ralph Emerson said this. He said, cause and effect are two sides of one fact. And we put them in that order. And then we're going to come to Hegel's inverted world, which to me, again, it reads like gobbledygook. I don't know whether it is or not. I think there's, but okay, I'll get through it. It's not as, I'll try and make it as palatable as possible. So we discovered that the truth of sense certainty, this, here, now, turned out to be its opposite. The inversion, the truth of here, I'm standing here, turned out to be the universal, the opposite of what it claimed. So when I said I'm standing here, here is here, but then because my perspective alters slightly, I'm here. And so, well, how do we match up all of these different heres? Okay, at a previous video we said that. And so what sense certainty said was it was saying the opposite of what it intended. It meant to say here, and but in the end it meant all heres, and it became meaningless. So it inverted itself. It was saying the opposite. And this inversion is an account of the movement of consciousness. It's the way it moves. It's not the world that's inverting. The world's not, the North Pole isn't suddenly tomorrow morning going to turn into the South Pole, but it's our concept of the world that's changing. And the story of consciousness is a series of inversions after inversions. Consciousness has to accept that all the different ways that we explain reality, sense certainty, multiple properties, one of the many, forces, laws, and all the different ways that we assess the world, they come from changes in consciousness itself. Changes in the world out there aren't really changes in the world, but changes in how we comprehend the world. So, yet there are changes in the world, but usually that comes about because our comprehension of the world has changed. So this is why the mind and, Kant's Copernican revolution is so important. So a 5-year-old sees differently to what I see, because I've got a lot more experience. When Hegel is talking about the supersensible, he must be talking about one reality. So the comprehension of reality it's the structure. It is the way reality, the comprehension of reality is actually the way reality is ordered itself. Consciousness is not going to find anything outside itself to comprehend itself. So this came to it was like my Jeremy Corbyn moment, which was, let's have peace. Can't we just have peace? Or justice. Justice is a really good idea. And if only it would just come to us. So, but you can't find anything outside other than what we do, other than what we think and we bring to the table. You can't have these abstract comprehensions. There's no God's eye view on the world. And the famous phrase, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings," from Julius Caesar. I think that's Cassius's line, isn't it? You know, it's we're masters of our own fate. "The Fault in Our Stars" by John Green. That's a book, okay, based on Shakespeare. And one of the characters says that getting hurt in the world is unavoidable, but we get to choose who we allow to hurt us. And at the end of the book, he says that he's happy with the choice, and he hopes that the woman in the book she likes, the woman who is fallen in love with, that she likes her choice too. So I don't know whether that helps, really, to be honest with you. But what he's saying is that we've got limited possibilities. So we've all got to go to, okay, look, let's put it like this. We've all got to go to work, right? Luck or fate determines whether it's backbreaking or just boring. Or you like it. And it's not really many people who say, "I love going to work." So it's not really innate ability. There's not something in you. So if I'm born in Turkmenistan, I've got an entirely different set of choices open to me than I have if I'm born in the UK. And so my choices are greatly restricted. If I'm born a woman in Afghanistan, I've got, when I say fewer choices, I've got almost no choice whatsoever. Almost. However, there are still women in Afghanistan who dare to try and campaign for the ability even to make the choice to read a book or to become educated. So they take that step and they get battered for it. They get battered for making a choice that is almost, we don't even think it's a choice, do we? It's not a choice to read a book, but it's a choice in Afghanistan. So their freedom is restricted, is incredibly restricted. But to do that is this spontaneous act of freedom that I think, the spontaneity that Kant was talking about. There are people, for example, also in occupied Ukraine, who make a choice to geolocate Russian forces, ring up the Ukrainian army and risk their lives, saying there's some Russian soldiers over here. So again, the choices are limited, they're under occupation. And people make their own lives, but under generally incredibly restricted conditions. Okay, Western Europe, North America. But then if you get rid of those places, you know, what we think as freedom is you know, where can you exercise it? And most of us in Western Europe and America, we won't make a choice that results in the whip of a Taliban guard whacking you over the face, or be sent to a Russian dungeon for having a tattoo. So freedom is not just important in most parts of the world, it's actually life and death. And we aren't puppets to external forces, even though it often feels like that. You know, so going to work every morning, we go, oh my God, the same stuff over and over again. But nevertheless, there are these choices that you can and do make. So hopefully that was a bit cheerier, a bit less. I mean, it's very overcast now, but hopefully that wasn't as overcast. It was made a bit more sense than the last one. I'm not sure whether I got it all right, trying to make it a bit more accessible and simplified. But next time we'll move on to what's it called? I've forgotten what it is now, but I was doing it last night. So next time we're moving on to the next chapter. It's oh God, it's not sense certainty, it's self-certainty. Self-certainty, right? Okay. Next week, self-certainty. Okay.